Hi, I'm Tina Hill. I am half of Ladies of The Lanai. Christine couldn't be with us today, but we have a very special guest. It's the myth, the legend.
Oh.
If you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Frank D'Angelo, and I own the company called D'Angelo Inspections. And we're pretty unique in terms of home inspecting companies. We are, from what the Villages tells us, the number one warranty inspection company in the Villages. We've been doing this for like 15 years, and we love what we do. And we're one of the only companies that I know of, if not the only one, that only do warranty inspections.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do any pre-sale inspections, which most people are used to, and they are very different than a warranty inspection.
I was going to say, what's the difference between a new home
Mm-hmm.
and a previously owned home?
Yep.
Or yeah,
Yeah, happy to answer that. So on a pre-sale house, and that's what a lot of people are used to having in their past if they sold their house up north or wherever, uh, they would have a home inspection,
mm-hmm.
and they would that home inspector would only look for mechanical, structural, or safety issues, and that's all. That you wouldn't see any cosmetic issues. You wouldn't see problems with the cabinetry or drywall issues, blemishes that a lot that we know the Villages will fix. So a warranty inspection goes a lot deeper because we put a lot of things in the report that if a realtor saw that thinking it was a pre-sale inspection, they would probably freak because it's so much deeper and more detailed.
Okay. And what exactly, so if you're someone new to the Villages, or just even with a new home, but what exactly is a home inspection when someone comes? And also, if you could talk about, especially with a new build here or a new home here, there's a punch list when you go through with the builder,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the 1 year
Yes.
list. And what's the difference between those two?
Of course. So in most every village in the Villages, the exception being Middleton, which is a little bit different, um, you have you give the Villages a big box of money, and they give you the keys, and you have a walkthrough, usually the day before, the day after, or very close to that closing date. You have a walkthrough with the builder or their representative, and that typically doesn't take too long. That's not really any inspection. It's just kind of an introduction to maybe how to turn on your sprinkler system or how to do a few other things. Once that is done, as long as you're here for that week and you're not closing remotely, you have 7 days to give the Village's warranty department a punch list. And they'll only accept one punch list.
And a punch list is
A list of things that you notice that you think is wrong or needs some attention, a blemish, something perhaps broken, or something like that.
right.
So what you don't know, because they don't really get into this very much, is that you have a 1 year, more or less bumper to bumper warranty for your house, that they'll take care of almost anything. And they're very good at that. They're much better than a lot of other big builders like, D.R. Horton and, Lennar, other companies. But that being said, there's between 12 and 20 things that are very common sense that they will only fix if it's on your punch list. Because after that, they could say, well, you might have done that. So the perfect example is, let's say during the walkthrough, you notice there's a big scratch in the kitchen sink. If that is detailed on your punch list that you turn in within that first week, they will most likely replace that kitchen sink because they know you could not have done it.
Mm-hmm.
After a week or so, your roasting pan could have done that.
Right.
So,
so what are some of the things like that you want to make sure you do in that first week, the first round,
Yep.
as opposed, and what are the things you want to wait that make,
Sure.
and why would you want to wait till the end of the
Great
year?
questions.
Okay.
So, you would want to look at all your windows, all your sliding glass doors, all your mirrors for any scratches or blemishes. You would want to check all the screens in your lanai and in your windows to make sure they're not missing or damaged. Because after a week, they could say, well, your landscaper might have cut that screen when they were weed whacking. Maybe they sneezed and the weed whacker moved and cut the screen. So they're not going to take care of that, of course. So if you document that within the first week, they would fix that. And you could go a little bit deeper, checking every light fixture for, chips, cracks, blemishes, even checking the tops of the toilet seats with a flashlight to make sure nobody stood on them and scratched those plastic toilet seats. Checking anything that they could perhaps say you might have done it afterwards. And that's just common sense. Right. The thing is that the Villages to date does not really give you that list of things. So what we've done, because we're so busy, I tell people, don't pay an inspector twice. Right. Do your own punch list. You don't need any special tools. You don't need to climb up on a ladder or anything. But check these things. It might take you an hour or two, but you're saving a good amount of money.
Is it mostly cosmetic things
mostly
at that point?
Mostly cosmetic, but sometimes, sometimes not. So what happens after you turn in the punch list? They'll call you and send a boatload of contractors to fix those things, just like after the 11th month inspection. The difference being that when we come to do the 11th month inspection, the house is going to settle. So things that aren't even showing in a brand new house that you just got the keys for, we will notice 11 months down the road. And that's where we do the really deep inspection. We walk all over the roof. We are one of the only companies, if not the only company, that crawl all through your attic. And we're looking for missing and displaced insulation, ductwork issues. The biggest thing we're looking for are broken trusses, which, your house is not going to fall apart if you have a broken truss, but it could be a serious issue down the road. Say 10 years later, you sell that house and that home inspector finds a broken truss. Now it's very difficult to get that fixed because you have a 10-year structural warranty, but after that, you're on your own. So the best thing we could do is find that within that first year. We document it. We take plenty of pictures in the attic and on the roof and everything. And then the Villages will come out and not only repair that, but the repair will be correct according to a structural truss engineer. And on a lot of the broken trusses, dependent on where the truss is broken, the truss engineer has to figure out and give you documentation that this is how it's fixed. And then they fix it, and it's fine. It's probably better than it was before it was broken, but now you have that valuable piece of paper that anytime down the road you sell that house and that repair is found, hopefully that inspector isn't going to freak and hurt that deal. You could just pull that piece of paper out, and I would make a copy and staple it in your garage or in your attic, say, nothing to see here. This was fixed properly, and move on. So,
right. So what are some of the things that make buying in the Villages different than elsewhere when you do a home inspection or not? But I guess.
That's another great question. So as you all know, because this is what you've been told, and it's true, you're not buying just a house, you're buying a lifestyle. This is a one-of-a-kind, amazing place. Where else can you play over 50 golf courses? Where else can you drive under roads and drive over turnpikes and and all the amenities you have here? It is a one-of-a-kind, amazing place. People ask me about the build quality, and I think they do a better job than other big builders. But because they build them so fast, we're going to find things because no house is perfect.
Right.
And you would want to have somebody knowledgeable about building construction that work with the Villages, although we have an ethical obligation to you. You are hiring us. You are paying for us. We work for you. We do not work for the Villages. We get along well with them, so that only helps you.
Is it fair to say the Villages knows who you are?
Oh, very much.
They know your name?
From what they tell us, we are the #1 warranty inspection company. Ironically, there's other home inspectors that hate doing warranty inspections because they're so used to doing those pre-sale inspections where all they're looking for is mechanical, structural, and safety issues. they think we have to be, oh, you got to be way too picky. You're looking for every crack in the grout, every chip in the tile, every crack in the drywall, every screw pop, cabinet adjustments, loose receptacles, sticky windows. There's just tons and tons of things that we're looking for. But we love them because where other home inspectors might have to do really not very fun homes like hoarder houses or crawling under crawl spaces, and where you're not always the only living thing under your house.
Oh, jeez.
We don't do that. We're just looking at these beautiful brand new houses, and we could book months in advance because of it. So this is our niche. We stay in our lane, we do one thing, and we do it well. And this is the last chance for getting things fixed without opening your wallet. So whereas our inspection would be a few $100s, you could easily get a few $1,000s of repairs done, and
under your warranty.
After your warranty is done, you don't have that option.
So, what's your background? What makes you qualify? How do you qualify to be a home inspector? And
sure.
And who's in your team of D'Angelo?
Yeah. So I guess a little bit about me is that years ago I started working for the sheriff's department, and before that I worked for a company called Wicks Lumber, where I learned a lot about building. That was before the days of Home Depot and Lowe's. Wicks Lumber was like a big national lumber company, and I worked years for them. And then I went to the sheriff's department, and then I went to the fire department. And my main career, I was well over 20 years. I was a career firefighter up in New York. I was also EMS instructor and a medic also. But I've always been a do-it-yourselfer, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to talk about it, but I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back. But my wife and I have done some pretty cool things. Our first house, we picked up a 2-story carriage house and moved it over to the other side of the property. Everybody said it couldn't be done, and we did it. We did it very cheaply, did it very well. I took years to design and build my own house, and it was a pretty fancy house, to be honest. When I sold it, it was the 3rd most expensive house in the county. 17-foot ceilings, in-floor radiant heat. It had roof windows that opened up by computer. When the first drop of rain hit that roof, they would automatically close if they were open. So it was a pretty high-tech house.
Maybe you should be building the houses here.
Well, those days are gone for me, but I'm a real do-it-yourselfer. So I built my own house. I have 3 sons. I delivered all my 3 sons. The joke is any guy could start the job, a real man finishes it. So I delivered all my own my sons, and so I've always been doing things yourself. I've built many things, decks, garages, things like that. So I did a lot of code enforcement in the fire department. So we would have to inspect for code violations and fire violations in a lot of municipal buildings and places of public assembly. So I was very well versed in building code. And so when I moved down here, I promised my wife I wanted to still keep my home inspection business, because I didn't want to just follow a golf ball. So I promised her we'd only do 1 a week for coffee money, because I didn't really need it. And 2 years ago, we did 900 inspections a year. Last year, my one son that used to work for me decided to go a different route. So now I only have my youngest son, Eric. He does all the inspections. He's very good at what he does. Last year we did over 600, and he's passionate. He's great at. He's probably about the best inspector I've ever known, and he's surpassed me. Now he's better than I am, and he's great at what he does. Loves what he does, and the deal is, he works for me, I pay him, and he brings grandkids over all the time. So everybody's happy.
I say sounds like a good deal, but it sounds like your previous experience, you develop an eye, you train your eye on how to look for things.
Yep.
So you can see, what to look for when you're going through something.
That sometimes isn't really that great. So you're invited to some party and you're looking at all around the house, and you notice this, you notice that.
I was going to say, do you walk into people's homes and notice things?
Yeah,
can you turn that off?
I try to, God gives you 1 mouth and 2 ears, and you use them in that proportion. What's the worst is when I go to a hotel and I see tons of code violations, So But anyway, we love what we do.
Okay. And how did you get Eric to come from New York to?
So Eric, his field of expertise was HVAC. He was actually specialized in. He was a union air balancer, and
And what does that mean?
so, and it comes into play here in the villages. So, in a well balanced house with air conditioning, every room should be within 2 inch or 2 degrees of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they're not. How many times do you hear a villager say, you know, my our master bedroom is like way hotter than the rest of the house and things like that? That's an easy fix, but Eric knows how to do that, and he could explain it to the homeowners
Okay.
how that's done.
I'm gonna have to ask Eric to come over.
Yes.
What are some upgrades that you would recommend for villagers, like when they buy a new home here? Are there
Mhm.
what are the things that you would say maybe you should consider doing this, and what are things that you would say don't waste your money,
Sure.
in your professional opinion?
Right, and this is an opinion, so
Okay.
everybody has different opinions. We try to save people money, and we've taken hours and hours of classes by engineers that are way smarter than us. I'm not a really big fan of, no pun intended, of the solar attic fans that people put on their roof. I've sat through hours of classes convincing me that that's not always the best thing to have done. You don't need radiant barriers in your attic. They don't do as much as people think they do, and they get dusty after a while, and the efficiency plummets, and sometimes it falls down because they're stapled up there. And so we don't recommend you to do that. One of the things we do recommend is, especially if your house is facing east, west, or south, is insulate the garage doors, because people complain that the garage gets hot.
I did that at my old house.
Okay. Yes.
Plus, it was black. It was a black garage. Maybe I
Oh.
should have just painted it.
Yeah. In fact, my house was a dark green garage door, and I fought with the HOA and said I had the right to make it a white door because it will reflect the heat, and I have the right to keep my house efficient and cool. And I won, and my garage door is white now. So yes, you have a radiant heat buildup in your garage. If the sun is beating on that all day, you go out there and you stand in the inside and you feel like 6 inches away from the garage door. If it feels like hot as a toaster, that's what's making your garage hot. Now, it's never going to be like air conditioning, because it's never going to be really cooler than the outside. But if you insulate that garage door, it will reflect back out the radiant heat buildup and keep your garage cooler, maybe 10 to 15 degrees cooler. We don't necessarily recommend insulating above the garage ceiling, because that's not going to help too much. It's actually going to trap the heat in there, and then especially when you exacerbate it by driving a car in there with a really hot engine. So we don't recommend that very much. There's some controversy about insulating the Lanai ceiling, because right now, the way this is, you're outside, you're not in conditioned space, and typically insulation is only between your conditioned and unconditioned space. But I don't mean to go in the weeds there.
But so if someone just could afford to maybe do one or two upgrades, what would you recommend? Would it be insulating the garage door, or are there other things people should
It would be
think
insulating the garage door. Then other thing is just personal taste. A lot of people enclose the Lanai. If you're going to enclose the Lanai, I recommend cry once when you buy it, be happy forever, and insulate it with double glazed insulated glass, because it's going to be better, temperature wise, efficiency wise, but it's going to be better for noise suppression. I personally love the Lanai. Buy a big enough house where the conditioned space is good enough for you. Keep your Lanai nice and outside, and it's beautiful today. What a beautiful day.
I know. It's nice and airy and a little windy, but it's good. What are some of the tips you would give for a homeowner if they're preparing for a home inspection? Do they need to do anything, or besides make it a little clean for you when you guys come through? But are there tips, or are there things people should do, or it shouldn't matter?
We need to get to the electrical panel box, because that's important to take that cover off and check all the breakers and everything. So that area needs to be decluttered. Um, we need to get to the air conditioning closet. Most of the houses have an air conditioning closet in their garage. So we need to get that to get to the air handler. And we need to get up in the attic. And we always go up in the attic through the garage. And we are one of the only companies that crawl all through the attic. There's too many inspectors out there. They charge less than we do. They pop their head up there like a gopher, but their feet never get up in the attic. And that's just not acceptable. They need to find those broken trusses and everything. And so we take the time and effort to crawl all through the attic, and we do it all the time. So we're good at it. So
And again, what should someone expect after you complete that home inspection? You give them a list. Do you submit it to the villages? I submit it to the villages?
So what we do, and every inspector is different, but Eric does the inspection, takes plenty of pictures. The software that we use is very quality software that we've developed. It's taken us over 15 years to develop it. And so when Eric's done, he does the report. I then look over the report. I look at every page, every picture, everything to make sure it passes both Eric and my own standards. Once that's done, and it's typically done within an hour or so of the inspection, we send it automatically to you, and we send it directly to the village's warranty department. They're used to our reports. They get them every day. They're going to go through each page of that report, and they're going to say, okay, this is for the electrician, this is for the painter, this is for the cabinet guy, and they're going to issue tickets just like they did for the punch list. And those contractors are going to call you typically, sometimes the same day, but typically, 1 or 2 days afterwards, usually within 48 hours, they're going to call you to schedule those repairs. And all you have to do is pick up the phone and tell them to come. And
are there ever things that are rejected that the villages will say, we're not going to do this? Or
Well,
what kinds of things might they, that you would find that they might?
So, yeah, there is a little bit of a gray area, although we are we know what they're going to say yes and no to. So sometimes some homeowners may have an unrealistic, expectation. And I'll just have to tell them, I'm sorry, but they're not going to do that.
What's an example of something that's an unrealistic expectation?
Sure. So if it wasn't in your punch list, they're not, if it's one of those 12 to 20 things or so that should have been on your punch list, after that punch, they won't do it. Like the scratch in the kitchen sink.
Or a scratch in the screen in the lanai, things like that?
Right. Because, and they're they're just trying to be common sense. If there's a big tear in your lanai, obviously you would have seen that and you would have put it on their punch list. So it had to have happened afterwards, and they're not going to be responsible for that. Although we work for you and not the villages, we're going to try to write that honestly and ethically in a way that could hopefully convince them that this was a reasonable expectation for the homeowner to have fixed, and we recommend that it be done. But you get the report that same day, so does the villages. So,
are there things that you should wait? Because I know when we talked before, you were saying they'll only come out one time for whatever. I don't know if it was like a certain subject, but that you should wait. Maybe it's something that could have gone on the punch list or something during the year, maybe that you see, but wait till your 11 month.
Totally.
What kinds of things should you wait till then and not ask them like 6 months in to do?
So if you find one drywall crack in the corner of your guest bedroom, we're going to probably find 5 more. And the villages at this point is going to say, look, you're going to have your warranty inspection probably in like 4 more months. Let them come. They're going to do a deeper dive. And then we send the person out just one time and fix all 5 of those cracks. So, obviously, though, if you have a plumbing leak under your bathroom vanity, you would want them to come right away. Or if there was a sewer clog or something, you would want them to come right away. Any safety thing, you would want them to come right away. But these aesthetic little things, if you've already lived there half a year, wait for us. And we always like you to make a list. Now, we're not asking you to do our job for us. But if you have, let's say you have a leaky gutter that, leaks, but it hasn't rained in a month and a half, we might not find that leaky gutter. So feel free to write that down. Other things that some things that only happen when all the conditions are right, write it down and we'll do a deeper look. There's some cracks that we find that we'll make sure we put in the report that we want them to fix, and they will. There's a few kinds of cracks that they won't fix or you don't want them to fix, to be honest. So
what kind of crack would that be?
Well, it's getting in the weeds a little bit, but your house is a monolithic slab. The footer is about 20 inches deep. This Lanai slab was poured at a different time, and this is only 3.5 to 4 inches deep, and it's poured at different times, so you can get differential movement. And if you do have a crack here, which you don't, that's great. But if you do get a crack there, you might not want to caulk that, because if it's going to continue to move for the rest of the life of the house, that caulk can work itself back out, and now it's unsightly. Sometimes you might get a crack that you really, really got to look to see. And if you could hardly see it, the village is they're just going to put caulk in there and paint it. And if they do anything more than that, it will look like a really bad scar. So sometimes the medicine is worse than the cure is worse than the disease,
Right.
And, you might want to leave it alone. So.
Okay. Is there anything you see in the future for D'Angelo? Is there expansion of employees or?
My other son that no longer works for me, he really wanted to do that. But my goal was more humble than that. I just wanted to have a small, successful family business without having a ton of employees that can cause your own problems. So sadly, we probably turned down half the business that people call because they call too late.
That's actually another question. When should I schedule an 11-month inspection?
Sure.
Because I shared with you that last year when I did the year that I did my other house, I wanted to get, because I keep seeing your name come up over and over and over again. You have a really good reputation. And when I called, they were like, oh, we can book you in 3 months. And I was like, I need it by next month. So I was out of luck. But when should you?
Sure. No, it varies time of year and things like that. Right now, we're pretty booked solid, for at least 3 or 4 months. But there's always some people that might call and say, we have to back up north, so we need to reschedule. So sometimes we have openings that every once in a while people get lucky, and we could be there next week, but that's pretty rare. I think people should call, soon after they close, because then you get the most choices.
Right. That's what I did. I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
So I already booked mine for the 1 year, but people shouldn't wait until the month before it's due.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, if you call now for August, I might have a couple of slots, but if you call for next March, okay,
wide
you
open.
Have your it's pretty much wide open. But I will tell you, I mean, and I know this could be watched at different times. Today is April 15th, tax day. We already have about 75 inspections booked for 2026. So that just tells you, I mean, I get so many people call and say, oh, the time flew by. We were too busy playing pickleball. I forgot to call you and all that stuff. And I sympathize with them. But hey, you bought your house, call us sooner rather than later.
Right.
And
but also people who aren't, I don't know if you do this with a regular, because I had never owned a home before. I lived in an apartment for many years. I didn't know that you have this 1 year thing. So people are not always aware.
Right. Some people don't know. So it's not mandatory. Okay. You certainly don't have to hire us or anybody else, but we would not be so busy if we came to your house and said, oh, it's a brand new house, we didn't find anything, give us our check. We would be out of business pretty quickly. But the fact of the matter is we get busier and busier and busier. So obviously people are pleased with the work that we do. They're surprised at the amount of things we find.
Right.
And we look for elephants and mice, big things and little things. And some of the things we find are kind of goofy. We have found we have found bathrooms that have the lock set on the bathroom door backwards, so you can lock people into the
Oh
bathroom, but
God.
you can't lock people out. And I mean, that's goofy.
Yeah.
We find some goofy things sometimes, and they're just honest mistakes.
Right.
I'm always surprised that how could these people lived here a year and not notice that you couldn't lock the bathroom door, you know? But we're trained to do that. I mean, we love what we do.
Right. It sounds like it. So now I also want to talk more a little bit about you, because we hear about D'Angelo inspections, but just to get a little more about you, if you whatever you want to share. But that you're.
I thought I did it. I thought I did enough already. Oh, we're
not,
boring people.
You're not
I'm a boring guy.
Right. But you don't live in the Villages. You live nearby.
Right.
And how did you end up in Florida from New York after being a firefighter in New York?
So, yeah, I mean, there's some things great about New York, the pizza, the apples, the fall. But, the taxes up there were very, very high. Politically, it got to be more and more where we probably weren't in tune. And when our Governor Cuomo said, if you're pro God, pro gun, pro life, you have no place in New York, get the heck out. I kind of said, okay. And I had friends of ours that moved down to the Villages and retired here, and Central Florida and retired here. And so we came to visit, and we, like everybody else, they drink the Kool-Aid, fell in love with down here, and bought a house here. And then I retired. I rented the house out first for a few years. And then when I retired, I moved down here. And that's.
And so why didn't you buy in the Villages?
Sure. So one of my best friends, he worked for the fire department with me. He bought in a place just a couple of miles from here in South Leesburg. I moved to the plantation, which is about a 3,000. They got about 2,800 houses, and it's a very nice,
a little smaller than the Villages.
A little bit nice. It is very nice. And then 7 years ago, my wife wanted a bigger house because grandkids were running around more. And so I bought a bigger house. It was comparable to a premier house here. Mm-hmm. They don't build those anymore, but if you've ever been in one, about that. So I bought a premier house in another 55 plus community just outside the bubble in South Leesburg called Legacy in Leesburg. And that's where I live. I'm on the HOA. I'm on the board there. And so I'm very active there. And, the Villages is the biggest, and, it's amazing what the developer does here. I think they do a better job at building a development than any other developer. But I'm happy in your. The joke used to be when I did all the inspections, people would say, "Do you live in the Villages?" And I'd say, "Well, my wife thinks I do because I'm here every day." But I actually don't. I live right outside, and that could change in the future. You never know.
Well, no, it's always. Yeah. I think it's always interesting to hear why people either buy where they buy, or why, you know what I mean? Like just the reasoning behind it. Yeah. You never know someone's story. But
usually just close to friends, or a friend lives in the same development, and things like that.
Right. What are some things that you enjoy when you do come to visit the Villages and you're not working?
Oh, I like going to the squares on occasion, mm-hmm. and just like driving around and just seeing all the new development. And what's very interesting about the Villages is it's just how they continually change in building materials and how they do some things. 5 years ago, you didn't see any tilt-up walls, and now they do.
What's a tilt-up wall?
Where they have the walls precast with the windows already in it, and they drop it or tilt them up.
I've seen the cranes down the street do it.
Of course.
I was like, wow.
And that's another thing about us, if I could do a cheap plug here, is that, we are ASHI certified, INTERNACHI certified, and we are FABI certified. FABI is the Florida Association of Building Inspectors. Only the top few percent of all the inspectors in Florida belong to FABI. Mm-hmm. And not only do Eric and I belong to FABI and get continuing education all year long, okay, my son Eric is also on the board of directors in charge of education for FABI. So Eric and I spend some of our free time teaching other inspectors how to inspect honestly, competently, and ethically. And we love doing that because Florida passed a law uh, last year or so, that any inspector that has 10 years experience no longer needs any continuing education. Could you imagine if your doctor
Mm-mm.
had that rule or whatever? Building technology changes all the time. So, Tina, in addition to the training and the education that means a lot to Eric and I that we're very involved in, a good home inspector should have a good array of quality tools. Like, both Eric and I are trained extensively in the use of a thermal imaging camera. That shows us thermal anomalies that we could find missing and displaced insulation. We could find uh, breakers that are too hot. There's a lot of things that we could find with that, and we've had the training to do that. We have moisture meters that we could find moisture intrusion when it's not always evident. Um, if you have a leaky window, we could get a baseline and then do the moisture underneath the window and prove that there's moisture behind the drywall that could cause mold and things like that. We have gas sniffers. Just about 2 weeks ago, we were crawling in an attic and we found a gas leak up in the attic. And the guy that just pokes their head up there like a gopher, they're probably not going to find that. So, you know, that's another difference between us and some other inspectors.
So having the I don't know if it's high tech equipment or just the relevant equipment,
Right.
and the continued training in it.
Sure. Well, that coupled with all the expertise Eric has in HVAC, that's heating and air conditioning.
Right.
A lot of folks have problems with their air conditioner and air balancing and things like that, and that's where Eric has expertise.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when you mentioned that, I know a handful of people, at least several people, who talk about how it's different temperature in different rooms and that nobody can figure it out.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, but there's a methodology that you want to work on, and it might take a little while of adjusting until you get it right. But you should be able to, for the most part, be within 2 degrees room by room.
But besides the squares, are there other things that you like about the villages, or that your grandkids?
The restaurants and.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites in the villages?
No, I know last time we thought we're very boring people. My wife has some health issues, so we don't go out to a lot of restaurants and everything. I cook a lot. Do it yourself there too. I mean, I smoke my own. I got a pellet grill. I got pizza oven, things like that, and I cook a lot at home. I'm boring. Other than doing this stuff, the houses stuff.
Well, I was going to say,
pretty boring stuff.
So, what are your favorite? Was it say you love steak? Was that you?
Yeah, well, I like cooking briskets and ribs and pulled pork and things like that, and pizza, and I make different doughs and things like that, and so. But yeah,
is there anything you can't do?
Boy, what a loaded question that is. Well, I've been married 45 years, and I still can't fully understand the opposite sex. How's that?
Okay, we'll let you go with that one. Also, are you a lover of bourbon? Was that what you? Or you enjoy a good bourbon? What are some?
Occasionally, yeah. I have a couple of guy groups. I have coffee with the guys on Saturday mornings, and we solve all the world's problems. And there's a cigar and bourbon group that I sit around with them, and I don't do as much of that, but I enjoy their fellowship. And again, we solve all the world's problems, and so.
And then just kind of in closing, is there anything that surprised you when you started working in the villages, about the villages in particular, or the people in the villages? Are they different than when you do home inspections elsewhere?
I don't think so. The Villages is a one-of-a-kind, amazing place. And it is funny when you talk to other communities and things like that, their perception, I mean, all the time, whenever you mention the Villages, somebody comes up with some joke about loofahs, and we won't go deeper than that. And I just roll my eyes. I say, come on, really?
Right.
Look at most of us, we've worked hard our whole life. We made good decisions. We were common sense people. Most of us spent less than what we made. We saved well. We invested well, and you try to stay healthy. I think health is the best wealth. And now it's time to relax and enjoy the fruits of our labor, and that's what we're all doing. And all these communities are very, very similar. I mean, the Village is amazing with the tunnels and the bridges, and all that
the
stuff.
whole golf cart lifestyle.
The whole golf cart lifestyle, yeah. Now, the place I live does not have a golf course, does not have a restaurant, but there is one right in front of our development. But we have over 5 miles of walking trails, 999 houses, and so ours is known as a nature community. So it's a little bit different. But I tell people when they move to Florida, first figure out where in Florida you want to live, and then you look at all the developments. And it's like a rack of beautiful shoes. They all look beautiful. They all look a little bit different.
Right.
But try a few pair on, and one's going to fit just right. And obviously, the Villages is doing something very, very right, because they're building and selling like 3,000 houses a year. So
right.
I love the Villages. And so
one more thing in closing, then you had mentioned that you and Eric have a nonprofit.
Well,
do you want to talk about?
Well,
or
sure.
It's Eric's?
Yeah, Eric and his wife Vicky. Okay. They're wonderful people, and Vicky has always loved horses, and she studied and got licensed as a therapeutic, trainer. And so they have a nonprofit called Horses with a Mission. Eric lives in Groveland, not very far away, and they have a lot of volunteers. A lot of them are from the Villages, people that grew up maybe with horses and just missed that a little bit. And they volunteer at her nonprofit called Horses with a Mission. Eric has a 15-acre horse ranch. They have about a dozen horses. And what they do all day, every day, is they do therapeutic riding for autistic kids, for special needs kids, and for disabled veterans. And so that's just a nonprofit they have called Horses with a Mission. You could check out their website.
And are they always looking for volunteers?
They are. And it's very rewarding. I mean, I tear up thinking about some of the success stories they've had. And Eric is such a hard worker. He works so hard for me. He loves doing home inspection. And then he goes straight home and he's building new paddocks, or he's fixing a fence, or he's working on the ranch. And their dream was to have a horse ranch, and they've achieved their dream from hard work, and they love giving back.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
I've heard so much. I think we've all heard so much about D'Angelo Home Inspection. So I just wanted to meet you and, share with everybody to know you a little bit better, just because we see your name so often.
Sure. So feel free to go to our website, DangeloInspections with an S.com. It's DANGELO inspections.com. You'll see our truck in the neighborhood. We have a pretty bright white and orange truck. Eric and I both wear these orange shirts, so when we're up on the roof, you can see us from 2 villages away. And our phone number is 352-250-7818. I pick up almost all the time, and I always call people back if you leave a voicemail. And, I work way more than just business hours. We just love helping people. So
I'll put your contact information in the description box. And then also, if you have questions, and write them in the comments, I can forward to you.
Sure. And anybody who's like just going under contract, you haven't closed yet or anything, feel free to reach out to us, and I'll give you that punch list of those 12 to 20 items. I know some people have taken it and put it on like the Facebook pages for Water's Edge or Shady Brook or whatever, and that's fine. I hope they give us credit, but
you're happy to share it with people if they contact you.
Of course. I mean, if we weren't as busy, I would come and do your punch list for you and come and do your 11th month, because they're 2 totally different inspections. But we're so booked that we can very rarely fit in any punch list inspection. That's why I'd rather have you save money, do it yourself, because I not find other inspectors that do a good punch list because they don't know what to look for. And so that's why I'd rather give you that punch list and have you do that.
Okay. That sounds like good advice.
Great. Thank you all.